Radio Algeria International. You will not miss a single major political or economic event. Radio Algeria International, our voice in the world.
This is the English service of Radio Algeria International. It's time for the news.
Prime Minister Nadia Al-Arbawi has talked with his Lebanese counterpart Najib Mikati and informed him about the decision of the President of the Republic Abdelmadjid Tebboune to supply Lebanon immediately with adequate quantities of fuel to operate the country's power plants and supply electricity. The Minister of Foreign Affairs and National Community Abroad, Ahmed Attaf, has reiterated the solidarity of Algeria and the countries of the Southern African Development Community with the Palestinian and Sahrawi causes. The 44th Summit meeting of the heads of state and government of the Southern African Development Community was held in Zimbabwe under the theme Promoting Innovation to Generate Opportunities for Sustainable Economic Growth and Development Towards an Industrialized SADC. And as the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is back to the region to try to reactivate the stalled negotiations aimed at reaching a ceasefire, the Israeli occupation has pursued its attacks against the territory, killing and wounding several Palestinians. And those were the major developments. Now the full news edition. Good afternoon. Entrusted by the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmadjid Tebboune, Prime Minister Nadia Al-Arbawi has made a phone call with his Lebanese counterpart, Najib Mikati, to inform him about the decision of the President of the Republic to stand by the brotherly Lebanon in these dire circumstances by supplying it immediately with adequate quantities of fuel to operate the country's power plants and supply electricity. The Minister of Foreign Affairs and National Community Abroad, Ahmed Attaf, has reiterated Algeria's and the member countries of the Southern African Development Community's solidarity with the Palestinian and Sahrawi causes. Mr. Attaf highlighted the very difficult conditions in Palestine, describing the ongoing situation in Gaza as a genocidal war led by the Israeli occupation forces. Mr. Attaf paid tribute to South Africa for bringing the issue to the International Court of Justice to hold the Israeli occupation accountable for its actions.
This is particularly the case for the Palestinian cause, which is nowadays undergoing one of the most horrible phases of its history, in view of the genocidal war being perpetrated openly and brazenly by the Israeli occupying power in Gaza for over 10 months. And here, I would like to pay a well-deserved tribute to the Republic of South Africa for taking this case to the International Court of Justice to make sure that the occupying power does not get away with its crimes easily, as it did systematically in the past.
Regarding the situation in Western Sahara, Mr. Attaf stressed that the SADC has consistently stood in solidarity with the people of Western Sahara, the last colony in Africa.
Our collective solidarity has always been constant towards our brothers and sisters in Western Sahara, in the last colony in Africa, in which is still being denied a right, an inalienable right to self-determination, that of the Sahrawi people. With time passing, some countries tend to accept or even lend their support to the colonial fait accompli in Western Sahara.
The Algerian foreign minister also hailed the SADC achievements, stressing that other African regional blocs have much to learn from the SADC in terms of political stability, economic cooperation and harmonious relations among its member states.
Today's celebration is also an occasion to congratulate SADC. Regional blocs have a lot to learn from SADC. We have a lot to learn on shared legitimate objectives, ambitions, and aspirations.
The Minister of Foreign Affairs has stressed that the strong bonds existing between Algeria and the SADC originate from the shared struggle against colonialism and apartheid, a commitment to Pan-Africanism and a mutual pledge to support oppressed peoples as Algeria considers itself an integral part of the SADC family, celebrating their unity in defending freedom, self-determination and resisting domination both in Africa and beyond. You still listen to Radio Algeria International and still with SADC meeting. The 44th summit meeting of the heads of state and government of the Southern African Development Community was held in the Zimbabwean capital Harare under the theme Promoting Innovation to Generate Opportunities for Sustainable Economic Growth and Development towards an Industrialized SADC. Regional leaders stressed the need to continue supporting political and economic stability in order to accelerate regional integration and industrialization. In his welcome address to the delegates, Zimbabwean President Emmerson Mnangagwa says Zimbabwe was honored to host the regional meeting, which will set the region's development agenda for the coming year. According to the Zimbabwean President, the SADC region needs to deploy innovative strategies in all sectors of the economy to boost regional value chains, with a particular focus on adding value and making the most of the region's abundant mineral and natural resources. He also stressed that the SADC region must also continue to safeguard and defend its sovereignty and its right to economic self-determination, assuring that under his presidency the SADC region will continue to vigorously implement regional projects and programs that improve regional development. You still listen to Radio Algeria International, and Finance Minister Aziz Fayed has pleaded during the participation via video conference in the third summit of the so-called Voice of the South for reform of the international financial architecture to make it more inclusive, transparent and adapted to the specificities of the countries of the South. Mohammed Khatil has the details.
A press release from the Finance Ministry indicated that during his speech, Mr. Fayed stressed that a global finance centered on people is not only a noble objective, but it is also a necessity to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, and to build a better future for all, where no one is left behind. He recalled in this regard that the countries of the South are at a decisive crossroads in the face of the global challenges of sustainable development, adding that it was necessary more than ever before to reconsider the traditional paradigms of global finance, which have often favored economic growth disconnected from social and environmental realities. To this end, the Minister of Finance affirmed that it is becoming crucial to mobilize resources that are not only sufficient but also accessible and equitable. Held in India under the theme A Global South Empowered for a Sustainable Future, the third Voice of the South Summit brought together some 20 countries of the South in its segment reserved for finance ministers dedicated to the issue Global Finance through a people-centered approach. This event was an opportunity for sharing points of view on several themes related to the challenges posed by fluctuations related to the global economic situation, in particular those related to debt in developing countries, access to low-cost financing, the reform of multilateral development banks, and financial inclusion, among others.
You're still listening to Radio Algeria International. The importance of mobilizing everyone for the success of the September 7th presidential election was at the heart of the speeches made by the candidates and their representatives on the third day of the election campaign. The details with Majid Mila.
From Borj Borarij, the candidate of the Socialist Forces Front, FFS, Youssef Aushish, stated during a rally that young people were the key to change, emphasizing the importance of mobilizing everyone for the success of this electoral event. For the FFS candidate, participation in the presidential election is a duty for those who aspire to meet the Algerians' hope for a better future. Mr. Aushish, who presents himself as the candidate of the youth and the vulnerable classes, also indicated that his electoral program entitled A Vision for Tomorrow included proposals aimed at providing solutions to the problems facing the country, affirming that the Algerian people occupy a central position in building the homeland. From Skikda province, the candidate of the Movement of Society for Peace, Hassani Sharif Abdel Ali, assured that his electoral program entitled Opportunity meets the aspirations of the Algerians. He said his electoral program aims to bring about change, calling on citizens to support him and to vote for him on September 7th. He also promised to achieve development and balance in the distribution of wealth and to ensure social justice among all Algerians, maintaining that his electoral program carried a promising economic vision while noting that the revision of the communal code will allow local authorities to play a central role in the national development. Meanwhile, the director of the electoral campaign of the independent candidate Abdelmajid Tebboune, Brahim Merad, recalled the various achievements made during Abdelmajid Tebboune's first term at the social, economic and political levels, particularly for the benefit of vulnerable social community. The Secretary General of the National Liberation Front, FLN, Abdelkrim Ben Barak, called from Bouj Bararij for a vote in favor of the independent candidate Abdelmajid Tebboune, affirming that this election is crucial for the future of the country. At the same time, he urged the Algerians to go to the polls massively to respond to those who are trying to harm the country's image and to pursue the building of the new Algeria.
To the Middle East now, and as the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is back to the region to try and reactivate the stalled negotiations aimed at reaching ceasefire, the Israeli occupation has pursued its attacks against the territory, killing and wounding several Palestinians. According to Palestinian sources, at least 25 people have been killed and over 70 others wounded over the past 24 hours. This brought to over 40,000 the number of Palestinians killed since the Israeli occupation launched its large-scale operations on Gaza over 10 months ago. This came as the U.S. diplomacy chief Antony Blinken is striving to iron out the divergences still hampering the conclusion of a ceasefire in Gaza. Several rounds of negotiations held in Doha, Qatar, between the representatives of the Israeli occupation and the Palestinian Hamas movement have failed to achieve any breakthrough. The Palestinian movement is accusing the Israeli occupation of dilatory maneuvers aimed at undermining all peace prospects in the devastated territory. Evoking the Israeli premier's vision, the Palestinian movement's representative here in Algiers, Youssef Hamdan, had the following.
What we have received from the mediators does not correspond to what was formulated in the declaration and the elements of language emanating from the Americans on the existence of a positive environment which would fill the previous gaps. The meetings discussed Netanyahu's vision compared to the previous agreement in order to set new formulations. We have not received any response from the mediators regarding the new conditions that Netanyahu added to the previous agreement. Washington has introduced a new vision which is totally in line with Netanyahu's new conditions and overrides previous approaches, including the principles which President Biden himself had announced earlier. We believe that the shortest way to reach an agreement is based on three conditions. First, the roadmap submitted by the mediators at the beginning of last July, which had been made as a proposal that was agreed on by the entity. Second, the major principle that Biden had announced during his speech, which includes the cessation of aggression, the withdrawal of the occupier from all the territory of Gaza, the return of the displaced, the reconstruction of what the occupier had destroyed, and finally the implementation of the agreement on the exchanges of prisoners. Lastly, the United Nations resolution which Biden had backed and which called for the immediate implementation of the proposals he had made.
And according to a member of the delegation accompanying the U.S. Secretary of State in his 9th tour of the region, assured that the various obstacles undermining the conclusion of a ceasefire could be overcome. Israeli bombardment from air, land and sea continues to be reported across much of the Gaza Strip, resulting in a dire humanitarian situation. Political expert Suhail Diab said access of humanitarian aid into Gaza is very urgent as what is happening there is unprecedented.
كل التقارير الدولية والوطنية
Most international and regional reports point out that the humanitarian situation is unprecedented since the Second World War. Today we are not talking about the 40,000 martyrs and almost 100,000 wounded, but about the policy of daily starvation, the thousands of cancer patients and the thousands of children facing death due to malnutrition. And this is happening despite international warnings on the urgency to facilitate the access to humanitarian and medical aid, which is a call for help in every sense of the word.
الصورة بالمفهوم العالمي 40,000 شهيد في قطاع غزة.
That was a statement of political expert Suhail Diab on the dire humanitarian situation in the Gaza Strip. And to Lebanon now, 3 blue helmets were today slightly wounded in an explosion that occurred in the southern part of the country, where exchanges of fire are taking place daily. The announcement was made by the UN peacekeeping force in Lebanon, which affirmed that an inquiry had been opened to look into the incident. Earlier, the news agency ANI said that several people were wounded after a village was hit by the Israeli aircraft in the region. You're still listening to Radio Algeria International and to Ukraine now. The UN's nuclear watchdog has warned that the safety situation at Ukraine's Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant was deteriorating after a nearby drone strike. Mohammed Khatel.
On Saturday, Russia accused Ukraine of dropping an explosive charge on a road near the occupied plant in southern Ukraine. The plant, which was seized by Russia's forces early in the war, has come under repeated attacks that both sides have accused each other of carrying out. The experts of the International Atomic Energy Agency IAEA on site were informed of the detonation near essential plant facilities on Saturday and immediately visited the area. They reported that the damage seemed to have been caused by a drone equipped with an explosive payload. This came as Russia claimed the capture of a village about 15 kilometers from the city of Pokrovsk, considered an important logistical hub in eastern Ukraine that it has been targeting for several months. The Russian Defense Ministry said in a statement that thanks to active actions, the Russian forces liberated the village of Zvirodonivka in the Donetsk People's Republic. In another development, Russia's foreign ministry said Ukraine had used Western rockets, notably US ones, to destroy a bridge over the Siam River in the Kursk region, killing volunteers trying to evacuate civilians.
And now to Sudan. The Minister of Health, Haytham Mohammed Ibrahim, has officially declared the outbreak of a cholera epidemic in the country. The announcement came shortly after the World Health Organization, WHO, said that around 316 people had died of cholera in Sudan. 2 days ago, the WHO spokesman said in a press briefing that 11,300 cases of cholera with 316 deaths had been reported in Sudan, and that the fever and other infections were also on the rise. UN Human Rights Chief Volker Turk has said that the transition in Bangladesh was a historic opportunity to ensure governance anchored in human rights, inclusivity and rule of law, stressing the need for accountability for all those responsible for human rights violations and violence. The High Commissioner said the transition presents an opportunity to reform and revitalize the country's institution to restore fundamental freedom and civic space. Turk said accountability for violations and justice for the victims are key for the way forward and will need to be accompanied by a national healing process. And in Thailand, the daughter of ex-Prime Minister has been sworn in as head of government of Thailand by King Maha. At 17, she becomes the youngest Prime Minister in the kingdom history, following the dismissal of her predecessor in connection with a corruption case and the dissolution a week earlier of the main opposition party. You're still listening to Radio Algeria International, 14 hours 49 minutes. Algiers time, and that's it for our news bulletin. I invite you now to listen to a cultural program presented by Aziz Agassi. I'll meet you again tomorrow at 2:30 p.m. Algiers time for our news bulletin.
Hello and good to have you with us in this new edition of Inspiring Figures. Today we'll shed light on the only person to win a Nobel Prize for both chemistry and physics.